ang kultura natin does not allow bastusan. Bastusan on air. Like, probably you've seen materials like, what's the most familiar? Hard Talk of Stephen Zucker on BBC, where you can actually say you're lying. Mind is, if you want to be interesting, you have to be interested. Di ba? You really have to be interested so that you can be interesting. But more than that, it's a very complex operation of personal branding. Where do you start? Just show up and do it. Lalo na sa podcasting. I had a podcast, I think in 2020.
Yes, okay. So Tito Boy and podcast, who are you when no one is looking?
I did a podcast called Who Are You No One Is Watching. Ang dami.
Watching, not
Yeah, watching. Who are you when no one is
Edit po yun.
watching? No, one of the questions I would usually ask pag ako'y nag-interview. But the thing is, you are saddled with a lot of problems when you're about to start something. Paano? Saan ako mag-uumpisa? How do I start? Who is supposed to be with me? How am I going to do it? Who's going to take care of the technical? The best way to start really is just to jump into it. Really.
Yeah.
Jump into it. I was lucky because I was working with Mark Noveloso. And we did it
A
together.
writer, Mark Noveloso.
One of the best. He's one of the best writers. And this is a kind of writing, this is a kind of collaboration that you don't actually write what you're supposed to say. But you do a lot of conversations. You do a lot of conversations as to what you want to do, ano bang gusto nating gawin, ano ba ang maki-brand identity ako. Ay mahilig ako dun sa dami nang nagpo-podcast. I remember when I was doing the podcast, I went to everybody's podcast.
Research, market research.
Around the world. So I started to listen to as many podcasts as possible. And that first question of, anong gagawin ko na naiiba? Anong gagawin ko that will make me jump out of? Anong gagawin ko so I wouldn't blend? Again, that's very tough because sometimes not blending becomes your equity. But when you blend, there's a way of blending and standing out. So, talon lang, tumalon ka, enjoy the journey, and I discovered that it was fun knowing what it was to do a podcast while I was doing it. Pero importante that somebody guides you. Pero huwag mauna yung takot. Again, the question is how do you become interesting? Huwag ka dapat lumayo doon sa kung sino ka. Huwag ka dapat lumayo doon sa what is most interesting about you. And minsan kasi Bianx, you cannot assess yourself. You need someone you trust. Mahirap. You need somebody you trust. Kasi I know I'm blabbering about a lot of things. It's a very complex operation. Like, what's boring to me may not be boring to you. What's interesting to me may not be interesting to them. So, in the end, you go back to what makes you feel good? What makes you feel happy? I mean, what do you want to talk about? What is it that you want to talk about? What is it that you want to share? At kadalasan yan comes from a place of comes from a core story. Ako'y taga-Samar, iba ang tingin ko, ako'y waray. I used to be so afraid about talking. I mean, nobody would believe that. Dahil natatapilok yung aking tila from E to E, O to O, until I became so comfortable with it. Sometimes, how do you become interesting is not giving in to the expectations of an audience. Like they'd say, dal-dalang ng dal-dalang yan. So, ano kaya? May mga episodes na dadaldal ka, may mga episodes na hindi. And constant, consistent listening to yourself, to your audience, to your market. But the best way to answer that question is, if you want to be interesting, you have to be interested. And do not be afraid to commit mistakes. it's fun. Committing mistakes, so learning, falling, rising. Because I don't think, Biang, especially in podcasts, you really find the level of energy, what you really want to do. Of course, there's a format, but it's nice to get in and out of the format. I just have fun.
I, of course, agree 100% with everything Tito Boy said. And if you do listen to Paano Ba the podcast, Tito Boy, lagi kitang kino-quote doon sa very specific quote na yon. I've said that several times, and even in talks sa school, lagi kong kino-quote si Tito Boy as that's one of the most life-changing advice you've given me. To be interesting, you have to be interested. And bibigyan ko kayo ng context. Si Tito Boy, pag pinapanood ko yan, kunyari meron siyang ini-interview na artista na I don't really care much for yung ini-interview niya. Or not even artista, political figure, whoever. Parang deadma lang ako. Kasi, di ba, there are some people na we're so into, there are some people na okay lang. But because when he interviews, yung grabe yung interest niya. So I'm like, oo nga, no? Parang, ay, oo nga, ang ganda nun about this person. Or, wow, ganito pala siya mag-isip. So, I guess what I'm trying to point at with this is when you are so into who you're interviewing, who you're talking to, if you're presenting at work or in school and you're so passionate about the subject matter, even if it's something na sobrang niche or sobrang specific, your love, curiosity, and passion tungkol dun sa topic na yun or sa tao na yun will spill over to the listener, to the audience, or if you're a writer, to your readers.
I like also challenging what is. Halimbawa, ngayong araw, I'm running back to Chimay 7 because I'm doing an interview with the Guapings.
Wait, as in Mark Anthony,
As in
Eric,
Mark
and
Anthony
John
and
Marie?
Eric. I think John Marie did it first, no?
Okay.
But you do not judge a subject.
You always tell me this.
Yeah, I learned that a long, long time ago. You don't judge a guest. Neither do you judge yourself. So, from my house in Quezon City to Glorieta, I was on the phone with my head writer and I was saying, let's find out what's interesting. Find out what's interesting. Ma-appreciate ba ito ni nanay? Kanina I was starting to talk about how complex it is because fortunately or unfortunately, doing television, doing podcast, hindi naman linear yan eh. You know, and that makes it more exciting. So, kumusta na si Mark? You do research, of course. You have to be interested. Kailangan nakikipagkwentuhan. I called the old manager. I called a friend. What's happening to them? Kahapon, nalaman ko that Mark Anthony Fernandez is based now in Pampanga and Eric is doing some business somewhere. So, the question is, tulungan niyo naman ako, sabi ko dun sa head writer ko, how do we make this delicious to nanay at tatay who are watching sa time slot natin? So, what I'm trying to deliver is, it's not, you're not alone there. You know, you have to accept the fact that when you do a podcast or when you do a television show, the overused word is, kailangan maging authentic ka, kailangan maging real ka. As if, what is authentic? You know, like for example today, we're doing this conversation, kami at Bianca, but essentially, this is a performance because we do this before an audience. So how do you combine a performance and authenticity? So it's not like, if this were authentic in the fundamental level, I would probably be walking around and Bianca ka dito sa, you know, it's not that. You perform before an audience. So, also, wala ka masyadong oras. You're given 20 minutes. You're given 30 minutes to do a conversation. So, you know where to begin. You know where to end. Yun yung ibig sabihin ko na pag interesado ka, what am I supposed to talk about in my podcast today? I am doing an interview with, let's say, Angel Oxin, or I'm supposed to talk about social media and the effects of social media on my family and my interaction with my niece and my nephew, etc. So when you're interested, madidiscover mo kung anong mga bagay you self-edit it. Because right now, we cannot be talking about everything about podcast. Now I'm going towards my experience doing interviews, for example. Iikutan mo. So I'm traveling back to GMA7 and I'll probably be talking to more people about the Guapings. A lot of you probably 90s, you know, and what was most interesting in the 90s. And sabi ko, how do we end it? I want to have fun. Can they dance? Can they sing? Kasi ngayon, and this is a tip, even in podcasts, a lot of podcasts in other countries, hindi na lang, you know, just talking to each other, or just ruminating, or just contemplating, reflecting on certain things. Meron what is it that will make you listen to what I'm talking about? That we have to discover, and that is a journey that you take every time you do your podcast.
Yeah. Ang dami kong gustong i-unpack. May oras hanggang hapon, pwede ba to? Oo. Hindi, I wanted to go to what you said about judging the guest. Tinanong ko to kay Tito Boy dati. Kasi syempre, being in the industry, you know a lot of stars, even politicians, personal lives. So sabi ko kay Tito Boy, what do you do when you're interviewing a guest? Alam mo naman yung isasagot niya sa tanong mo because you know what happens in the person's life. Pero, ang sagot niya, tumaliwas sa katotohanan. Either lied, fabricated, or said something different from what you know actually happened. Sabi ko, how do you react pag ganun, Tito Boy? Yung sinagot ka, tas parang in your head, parang di naman yun yung nangyari. What did you answer, Tito Boy? Can you share with them? When a guest of yours says an answer that you know, true ba?
I don't remember what I told you, but what did I say?
You just said that you don't judge the guest.
No, I don't.
And you
I
said
really
that
don't.
yun ang kwento na gustong ipresenta nung ini-interview mo or kinakausap mo. So, on one hand, you have to respect that. But I guess, susundot ako, on the other hand, yung responsibility mo as an interviewer, how does that play in?
Okay, let's talk about today. I am doing a conversation with Bianca about podcasts. Ang ingay, matindahan, you know, I don't judge a situation because of its given weaknesses. Na para bagang, Bianca naman, how can I discuss podcasting in a mall with you? I'm judging. You know, and nandun ako sa the things that shouldn't be happening. Instead of looking at it, I want to be able to do it because that can be exciting doing a talk material in a mall. Or instead of saddling my mindset with, no, but it's supposed to be a controlled environment. That's one. Number two, doon sa tanong na, halimbawa, nagtanong ka, a politician, movie stars, public figures, politicians, are all involved in the business of projection. You know, not my line. Bono of U2 was the first one to say that. We all want to project because it is a performance. And when you perform, it is not just the voice. Sometimes, we're hoping. It's, ano bang suot ni Bianca, anong suot ni Boy Abunda, paano ang pormahan nila dyan? Paano tayo it's projection, okay? Pero, what is common are audiences of politicians, of sociologists, of entertainers. The audience is temporary. We are temporary as audiences. We shut off. I mean, you know, we tune off. We're not interested in what people are talking about. Pero pag interview mo, halimbawa, lalo iba ang texture biyangs ng entertainment and halimbawa public servant. Kasi if it is a brazen lie that is said in front of you, I mean to your face, you're talking about public accountability. So the tenor is different. The tenor is different. So you have to find a way. I'm answering your question about responsibility to yourself and to your country and to your audience. Kasi pag public official ang kausap mo, may accountability involved. Okay? But ang kultura natin does not allow bastusan. Bastusan on air. Like, probably you've seen materials like, what's the most familiar? Hard Talk of Stephen Zucker on BBC, where you can actually say you're lying. You know, I heard, these are the stats, for example, or in your other pronouncements, nagsisinungaling ka. Tayo, hindi tayo ganun. Is it good? Is that bad? I don't know. Pero makikiramdam ka, depending on, again, who you are, what your brand identity is, makikipagsabunutan ka ba? Makikipag-away ka ba? Do you keep quiet? Do you squirm? Do you fight back? Do you provoke? Nasa iyo yun. If you are an entertainer, not honest about your height or your age, there is no public accountability there. I mean, there is no public money about your reducing your age or increasing your height by 2 inches. So, may pagkakaiba yun. The ideal, of course, is when you talk to someone who is forthright. That's the ideal.